Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing unto you, O Lord, my rock. Have you noticed that we as a society don't really experience things anymore? Instead, most of us stand behind our phones and our cameras, trying to capture moments and put them in a bottle. But what Sharon Ranganath has found and reported in his new book, Why We Remember, is that our brains will tell us that we weren't really there. We won't really have the experience when we are behind our phones and our cameras taking pictures and videos, because the taking of the pictures becomes our experience rather than the experience itself. We have become comfortable Christians. We think we know all the important Bible stories. We volunteer in all the right places. We show up for church most of the time. We like our routine. And if it changes, well then, things can become pretty tense. But aren't we doing exactly what Peter did in today's gospel lesson? Peter saw Jesus transfigured, and there were Moses and Elijah too. And Peter wanted to build dwellings, tabernacles, for both the prophets and for the Messiah, and keep them there. Keep them in that comfortable and beautiful and safe place. He wanted to stand behind his iPhone in the sky and record it all for posterity, rather than to take on the hard work of ministry. But you know what? Jesus has never been about comfort. Jesus came to change the status quo. Jesus came to push back against what had become comfortable and complacent. But Peter wasn't getting it. Was it out of fear? Probably. Mark did say they were terrified, and wouldn't you be terrified? That's a pretty strong vision. So what happens when we're afraid? We move into what we can control, into what's comfortable. So it makes sense that Peter would want to keep everyone in their own little boxes. It's what he knew. He tried to control the situation. But God was having none of it. And Peter was not listening to Jesus. So God says, listen, do what he says. What did Jesus say? Jesus said there is no time to stop. And this is no time to get comfortable. We have work to do to spread the good news, and we can't do that up here. We have to go to where the people are. We have to stay uncomfortable to make a difference. Are we listening to God? Are we getting outside of our comfort zones and going out to spread the good news? Or do we act one way during the week and show up on Sundays to worship a Jesus that we have built a tabernacle for? Because, well, it's comfortable that way. But in this crossing over into Lent, which begins this Wednesday, we do need a stern reminder that God offers not only to Peter, but to each one of us. Listen to Jesus. Following Jesus is not comfortable. It was never meant to be comfortable. It was never meant to be stagnant. What can you do to get uncomfortable for Jesus? What risks are you willing to take for God's kingdom? Jesus' devotion to the reign of God on earth provoked the powers, those powers of fear and hatred and greed and falsehood, violence and despair, those powers that pervade and distort everything human. And these actions ultimately resulted in their oppressive and murderous response to Jesus' ministry of love. These same powers are seeping into our lives right now. And they come in the form of comfort and control too. Jesus has called us all up to the mountain to knock us out of our comfort zones, to send us back into a world that so badly needs to hear about Jesus, that so badly needs us to push back against these powers of fear and hatred and greed and violence and falsehood and despair. Whether we like it or not, crossing over into the next phase of Jesus' ministry will come with challenges, not only for the disciples, but for us as well. I mean, nobody said it would be easy, right? Like Moses and Elijah before him, Jesus knows that God longs to empower far more than just one individual. Now, certainly there is only one Messiah, but all people are called to be disciples. All people are called to drink the cup that Jesus drank. All people are called to be baptized with his baptism. And we must all follow Jesus on the way to the cross and be prepared to take up his mantle when we are called. Crossing over brings growing pains. So ready or not, are you ready to respond to Jesus' invitation to ministry? Are you ready to cross over? Amen.